Chapter 2 Equestrian Wasteland. What world do you live in? Out here in the real world, blood flows, little pony. Blood flows. Nothingness! My first several seconds outside were a heart-bursting eternity of hoof-pounding terror. The story had been right. All that was outside was a great, black nothingness. It surrounded me, suffocating. If I had been able to draw breath, I would have screamed. And then my eyes started to adjust to the darkness. I began to calm, gasping, feeling weak, and not just a little foolish. In my defense, I had never experienced night before. Not really. Sure, I'd always turned off the lights before curling into bed, but that darkness was small, confined to my little room, and there was always the glow from under the door. The hall lights of Stable 2 were eternal. This was different. A cool air, quite unlike anything within the stable, tickled my coat and chilled my skin beneath. It bore smells that were dank and rotting, dusty and alien. I could hear the sounds of night insects, creaking of wood and a far-off sloshing, but I was struck more by what I couldn't hear. The constant low hum of the stable's generators and the ever-present high whine of the lights were gone, so powerful in their absence that I first mistook the outside as silent. I could feel dirt and broken stone beneath my hooves, so unlike the smooth and sterile floors I had trotted all my life. And though I could not see much or far, I could see further than I had ever seen before, and there were no walls to mark the end of the room. I was staring into a horizontal abyss that stretched out from me in every direction. An entirely new panic began to form within me. My hind legs went out from under me, and I sat, stunned. I turned my gaze to the ground, breathing deeply, thanking it not only for holding me up, but being a visual end point. Then I made the mistake of looking up into the sky, and the absolute endless upness of it sent my head spinning and my stomach lurching. Great masses of clouds rolled over most of the sky, but there were gaps through which soft light poured, and through those I could see the up went on forever. Insanely, I thought of the clouds as a great net, made to catch me if I fell from the earth into the yawning gulf above. But if I slipped through the holes, I would just fall up forever. I clenched my eyes shut and tried to keep from vomiting. The fear and queasiness was intense, but passing. Once my faculties returned, I began to notice those things which had escaped me in my initial panic. The surrounding terrain was becoming evident. The world around me did not stretch out evenly. The ground heaved and rolled, hills creeping towards mountains. The earth was punctured by the upthrusting black fingers of long-dead trees. Along distant hilltops I could see the swaying, leaf-shrouded branches of healthier woods, but the living trees near Stable 2 were few, scattered, and sickly. Second, I noticed that my pip-buck was flashing with a host of alerts. The mapmaker was already beginning to do its work on my new and unfamiliar surroundings, and to my surprise had already pulled a labor from the ether. Sweet Apple Acres. Turning around to get my bearings, my eyes were drawn to the large, hollowed-out tusk of what I had assumed had once been a magnificent house. Now it creaked and swayed in the breeze, as if threatening to collapse. Looking to my pip-buck again, I noticed that it was picking up several radio transmissions. The radio broadcast from Stable 2 was dark, but new stations had taken its place. My heart leapt, for it was the first indication that there might be pony life out here after all. I nudged my pip-buck to start playing the first station on the list. Still sealed up. There is no way inside. My son, he ate one of the apples from those damned apple trees up near the stable, and now he's terribly sick. Too sick to move. We've holed up in the cistern near the old memorial. We're running out of food and medical supplies. Please, if any pony hears this, help us. Message repeats. Hello? Is there any pony out there? Please, we need help. I was bringing my family to the stable up near Sweet Apple Acres when we were attacked by raiders. Only my son and I survived. We made it to the stable, but it's still sealed up. There is no way inside. My son, he ate one of the apples from those damned apple trees up near the stable, and now he's terribly sick. Too sick to move. We've holed up in the cistern near the old memorial. We're running out of food and medical supplies. Please, if any pony hears this, help us. Message repeats. Hello? A voice was filled with a terrible resignation, as if the pony had already given up hope and was just going through the motions. Shaken, I turned it off. I didn't think I could bear to hear it again. That is when I noticed the soft ticking from my pip-buck. Checking it over, I discovered that its radiation detector, a feature I had never known to be used, had self-activated. The cute little rainbow dial had already been planted firmly in the green. It was still there, but edging discreetly towards the yellow. I couldn't just stand here beside what had long, long ago been the door to a simple apple cellar for the rest of my life. Well, I could, but it would be a relatively short and miserable life. A realization was dawning on me. With so many directions to go, what was the likelihood that I would choose the path that Velvet Remedy had followed? Even though she only had a few hours' head start, the prospect of finding her was bleak. But I had to start somewhere, and the best chance I had was to get up high and have a look around. The ruins near me rose higher than any of the nearby trees, and the sheared-off roof of the upper tower was probably the best vantage point I could hope for. I closed my eyes, steadied myself, and went inside. What was left of the Sweet Apple Acres building proved sturdier than it looked or sounded. It was also almost barren. Anything of value that had survived had been looted, leaving only scraps that no pony wanted, but that time itself seemed unable to erase. Rusted shoes, boxes of soaps for cleaning dresses that no longer existed, a pitchfork with a shattered handle, a rake. I began up the stairs. My eyes were alerted to a feeble glow, the soft green color of a poisoned apple bathing the room above. The glow came from the screen of an old terminal, a device of arcane science identical to the ones used throughout Stable 2. It seemed miraculous that it still worked after centuries on the outside. When Stable Tech built something, they built it to last. Curiosity lured me to it, and my wonder was quickly replaced with understanding. It was no coincidence that this particular terminal was live, for on it was a fresh message. To any pony who has left Stable 2 in search of me, please, go home. I am doing what I have to do. The Overmare understands, even if she can never agree, and I hope one day you will too. I will not be back. Do not look for me. Do not endanger yourself further for my sake. Please forgive me. Velvet Remedy. I searched the terminal for more, but all the other messages were ancient and corrupted, save for one. And that one had a rather unique encryption, something I had heard of but never seen before. A binary encryption, such that in order to decrypt it, I would first have to download the message into my pip-buck from both the terminal which had been used to send it and the one upon which it had been received. Having nothing better to do with the vast amounts of storage my pip-buck was capable of, I downloaded it. In reality, I knew that the chances that I would ever come across the companion terminal, much less that it would be functional, were overwhelmingly against me, nor did I have any reason to believe a message centuries old would be of any significance. More importantly, I now had to face that outside was my new home. Even if I found Velvet Remedy, it was unlikely that she would accompany me back. I'll admit, I had been subtly entertaining a fantasy where the Overmare would be so delighted with Velvet's return that she would embrace us both back into the herd, maybe even throw me a party. Now I was forced to admit how foolish that vision was. Thinking upon this made my head fill with black clouds. But as I reached the top of the ruins and looked out over the wasteland, a bright light, feeble as it was, flickered in that darkness. Just as the light from the campfire, not half an hour's trot distant, poked an orange hole in the night. As I approached the firelight, I knew something was off. Something about the way the dusty beige unicorn was laying on his mat of straw, legs curled up under him. Some tenseness in his body language. But it wasn't until I stepped hoof into the light and got a good look, a warm hello dying on my lips, that I saw he was gagged, and caught the glint of the flames against a few exposed links in the chains binding his hooves. "Well, looky here! Walked up all nice and pleasant, didn't she?" A large earth pony emerged from the shadows of a nearby rock. His hooves clacked metallically against the rocky ground, shod in cruelly spiked pony shoes. Two more ponies slid out of hiding on opposite sides. One, another earth pony holding a shovel whose blade had been lethally sharpened. The other, a unicorn whose glowing horn levitated towards me, a short instrument of wood and metal with two barrels. Each pony wore barding made from thick hide. Much like Night, I had never seen a firearm before, save for pictures and books. But those books were more than explicit enough for me to recognize the mortal threat. The bound unicorn on the mat shook his head with a sad yet derisive look, and began trying to scrape the gag away with a forehoof, no longer making effort to keep the chains secret. The 3 ponies menacing me spared him only the occasional glance. "Might as well have trussed herself up for us," the gun-wielding unicorn snickered. Then, addressing me, "You wouldn't mind, would you?" Laughter. "And another unicorn, too. She'll fetch a pretty price, this one." Fetch a price for what? And from whom? The one holding the shovel-spear in his mouth mumbled something incomprehensible. Then, apparently deciding the gun was sufficient deterrent, spat out his weapon and reiterated, "By the I mean, look at her! I think she's taken a bath!" I was suddenly and bizarrely aware of how filthy all 4 of the ponies were, and how foul they smelled. I managed to cover a gag with a sneeze. "What's going on?" I asked. Of the emotions battling for supremacy in my head, confusion had clawed its way to victory. The captive unicorn finally succeeded in pulling the filthy gag free. "They're slavers, you idiot!" Monterey Jack, the dirty beige unicorn with dour expression and a cutie mark that looked like cheese, followed behind me as we trudged alongside our captors, walking a broken path that was once a road. My legs were in chains, making walking difficult and anything more speedy than a trot impossible. My pipuk had stymied the slavers' efforts to bind my forelegs, eventually forcing them to chain me above the knees. Had the one with the shovel-spear not been holding its point dangerously against my throat, the other 2 would have gotten a few hooves to tender places for their efforts. As it was, they made short work of me. I was not gagged, but Monterey had convinced me early that unnecessary chatter from the slaves-to-be would likely result in the loss of my tongue. Not that I had much to say to these brutes anyway, aside from my repertoire of colorful metaphors. I didn't expect that they would answer my questions, even if my tongue would survive the asking, and they were being chatty enough with each other to suffice. "Hate this part," grumbled the earth pony through the spear clenched in his teeth. "Well then, if you would just learn to swim, we could take the long way, couldn't we?" suggested the unicorn with poisoned sweetness. "Hate feet." By his smell, decidedly more pungent than the others, I guessed he just hated water in general. "How about you stop complaining, and I'll let you sample one of the slaves before we get to the forest?" Their leader, the earth pony named Cracker with his spiked shoes and a cutie mark that looked suspiciously like a whip, or maybe a snake, had turned towards Monterey and I with a filthy smile. I looked away. They laughed. Through their disgusting dialogue, I could hear a liquid sound ahead. Not like a burbling water fountain, but closer to a sloughing muck. And something else. A distant sound, getting closer. Music? Yes, music. Slightly tinny, yet triumphant? Regal? I couldn't put my hoof on exactly what feeling the music was trying to inspire, but it was brightly out of place. Cracker took note of my expression and smirked. "You look like you've never heard that before. What, did you live your life in a stable? If you're hoping for the cavalry, that ain't it, Philly. That's just one of those sprite bots." The music cut out with a sharp twang. The unicorn slaver, sawed off, trotted ahead a bit, peering down the path ahead. Turning back to the rest of us, he smirked. "Think one of the radigators got it?" Cracker suggested it flew into some pony's booby trap. The other earth pony suggested a mouthful of spear-mangled mumbling. The unicorn turned forward again, and the glow from his horn illuminated the machine, a metal ball about the size of a foal's head floating on 4 silently flapping wings, hovering silently right in front of his face. No arcane science this, I could tell. It was pure earth pony engineering. "Fuck!" Sawed-Off leapt back a full pony's length in surprise, then swung his shotgun to bear and fired it at the sprite-bot. The sound was like a metal plate falling from the ceiling, and it echoed through the night-darkened hills. Sparks specked the metal ball as it was peppered with scattershot. It let out an electric whine and darted into the darkness. The unicorn almost took off after it, but Cracker's voice cut into the distance between them. "That's enough, Sawed-Off. Save your ammo." "Damn it, I hate it when they pull that stealthy shit. It's a flying fucking radio. It's not supposed to sneak up on ponies." My ears were burning from the free flow of crude profanity, but I didn't mind. I was mulling over what I had just seen. Idiot, muttered Monterey Jack under his breath. They heard that all the way in Ponyville.